What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Crossover U College Hoops Talk podcast, which you can find, as always, right here on the Crossover channel. My name is Kanaye, and I'm joined with Josh. And today we are going to be bringing you guys our Big Ten conference overview going into the 25-26 season in college basketball. Big Ten looks to be pretty exciting this year. A lot of marquee names coming back to the sport, a lot of big-time transfers. Should be an exciting year. And we're going to break down our tier list for where we see teams stacking up in the league, as well as some of our conference awards that we could see guys ending up with at the end of the year, as well as our pick for who wins the Big Ten. But before we get into that, I feel like anything you see on this channel, this podcast, or any other content that might have come across your feed, please engage with it in any way you can, whether it's liking our videos, subscribing to our channel, or just telling other people about us. It really goes a long way with growing what we do here at the Crossover. So let's get right into it and get into our tier list. Tier 1, I think Purdue is head over heels above the rest of the field in Big Ten.
Can't disagree with that one. Honestly, I think it's probably one of the easiest things to say about the Big Ten right now. It's just that Purdue has so much talent. They basically held on to everything from last year, brought on great transfers, great freshmen, just everything that they could do, they did do. And it feels like, although the Big Ten is still a great conference and probably better than last year in general, I feel a lot more confident in Purdue than I feel with any other team. And that is just the truth of the matter for honestly anybody.
Yeah, and Purdue should by far be a top 3 offense this year. I think the weaknesses for them this past season was both defense and rebounding. They addressed rebounding with Oscar Clough. He should bring a lot of action on the glass, both offensively and defensively down low. Defense is still kind of up in the air. I think there's a world where CJ Cox becomes a starter for Purdue and is able to be that kind of legit 3-and-D guy for that program. But I think, again, Purdue, deepest team in this conference by far, and they got the firepower to back it up. But in the second tier, we have, these are teams that still have a window of opportunity to be able to go on a run in March, potentially make a Final Four. Those teams, in my eyes, be Michigan, Illinois, and UCLA. I like what Michigan's done in bringing a potential National Player of the Year into their program in Yaxel Lendeborg. Illinois has gone completely international. They brought back Kylan Boswell as well. Lost a few guys in the portal, but those international guys, if Brad Underwood hit on them, they got a chance to be really, really good. UCLA, of course, you're bringing Donovan Dent, one of the top transfers in this offseason cycle. You also bring back guys like Tyler Thibodeau, who have really solid ceilings in being able to compete for Big Ten teams. And yeah, I just think that they're, of course, a tier below Purdue, but still a level above the rest of the playing field in Big Ten.
Definitely. And honestly, I want to note upon 3 players, each one per team, that I feel really gives each squad an edge over the other. Illinois has Stojakovic, who I think beyond the other 4 Balkans guys are going to be he's going to be a different level. He already played in NCAA before. He had that year at Stanford and the year at Cal. I think he's getting a beautiful, beautiful slate of games and slate of players that I think he would work so much better with than anything he was being handed at those bottom tier now ACC squads. And then in Michigan, it's Yaxel, obviously. I think there's really nothing much more to say to him. He's at the top of the line in all of D1 right now, and he should be the player everyone's looking for, not just in the Big Ten, but in the whole sport. And then UCLA has Donovan Dent, which, could I say much else? You saw him in New Mexico last year. You'll see him again, honestly, on a far better scale and a far more visible, noticing scale at UCLA. And I think he's going to give that program a lot of breathing room that it hasn't seen in a few years, to be honest.
Yeah, and getting to the third tier of teams I have in this conference, I have Michigan State. I love the retention they brought back. Of course, Izzo, one of the best to ever do it. They should definitely be in the mix to make another NCAA tournament. Oregon, I think, is being super underrated going into the year, bringing back Jackson Shellstead and Nate Biddle, 2 guys who I think already are great players, but could even jump to a higher level of their game. Wisconsin, I like what they did in bringing in Nick Boyd, as well as keeping John Blackwell, 2 guys who I think can compete to be on all Big Ten teams. And then Ohio State, who super underrated returning, and Bruce Thornton Jr., one of the best players in the country. I don't think he gets enough credit. And then Iowa, of course, bringing over a lot of people from the D2, formerly, D3 level. I forget all of completely, but Drake, this past year was really solid, and Bennett Sturts, one of the best, if not the best transfer in this offseason cycle. Video game numbers he put up at Drake, really good show in the NCAA tournament. They're also bringing in Brendan Housen. I love the shooting they have in that backcourt between the pair. And I definitely think these teams should probably end up making the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, these are definitely wildcard teams that I could see competing at a very high level, not just in conference, but also in March as well. I do want to touch upon Michigan State, Ohio State, and Iowa. I feel like these are three teams that can really mix and match in the Big Ten and can be in like all their own little tiers if you think about it. Michigan State has Cohen Carr, incoming freshman Cam Ward, and a slew of guys behind Izzo. I feel like the team is well underrated as they always are to start the season. And Cohen Carr is probably going to have a breakout season like we have not seen from this man. And I'm very excited to see that. And I think that goes to the same thing with Ohio State and Jake Diebler and obviously Bruce Thornton, who could really slide himself into a, Big Ten Player of the Year conversation, Big Ten first team, which we'll get to. Like he really has a ceiling, and I'm glad he stayed. And with Iowa, as Kanaye mentioned, Ben McCollum is coming in to really change Iowa for the good. Sturts is kind of going to be in a Luka Garza role, but he'll have Brennan Housen. He'll have some additional shooting. I feel very confident on where Iowa stands. I feel like all these teams mentioned will make the tournament 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, and getting onto the fourth tier, these are teams I view as pretty much bubbly going into the season. Those teams being USC, Indiana, Washington, Maryland. I like USC. Granted, they did lose Elijah Arenas. I hope he gets better soon and is back on the game floor the following season. But I like Des Claude. I liked how they landed Chad Baker-Mazara. Baker-Mazara is one of the best isolation scorers was one of the best isolation scorers in the country last year. So I like what they have there between the two. But yeah, these teams will probably be riding the bubble for the majority of the season. I do think USC gets in, but I honestly have a tough time seeing the likes of Indiana, Washington, Maryland being able to make the dance this year.
I kind of want to throw some shade towards Washington. I feel like they've definitely seen a lot of a different tune than the first year Jenny Sprinkle, who, by the way, great coach. If you saw him at Utah State, you know how good he is. But it was just him and Great Osobor, which I think really lowers how we're viewing him. His roster is really nice. Jacob Ognacevic, Wesley Yates. I'm trying to think at the top of my head. I think they really just have a slew of transfers. I get it. You don't really know how that's going to work out at the end of the day. And it is the second season, and he is playing in the Big Ten. So I don't really expect him to be anything higher than 10 seed. But I feel more confident that he and Washington makes it in than, honestly, a team like Indiana or Maryland or even USC, especially considering Elijah Arenas is likely after the entire season, and they will have to rely on Baker-Mazara and some other additionals to lead that squad, which is just not what the team was meant to be.
Yeah, and getting into the last year, these are teams that I just have missing the NCAA tournament, those being Nebraska, Minnesota, Northwestern, Rutgers, and Penn State. You got to feel for Northwestern, just the injuries they dealt with this past season, and losing both Nick Martinelli and Brooks Barnheiser. And then Rutgers, of course, couldn't make the tournament last year with the pairing of the lottery picks, Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper. I very much see those two programs returning to mediocrity. And I just have a tough time seeing any of these teams going on a run and being able to make the dance.
I would like to focus on Minnesota Northwestern if you are a Big Ten fan. Minnesota is starting New Year coach Nico Medvedev. He came from Colorado State. It feels like a fresh new thing. They are obviously losing Dawson Garcia, who has been a staple for them for a while now. Obviously, you don't expect him to win a lot, but to see how Medvedev does in his first year is nice. And then I will correct you, Kanaye. Martinelli is staying, and if you do want to watch some Northwestern ball, I would highly recommend you tune in for his games. He could honestly lead the Big Ten in scoring. He's the only legit player on that squad, and I do look forward to seeing him just chug it out on what will likely be a bottom 3 to 5 team in the Big Ten next year.
Yeah, I definitely apologize if you're a Northwestern fan watching. That's definitely my bad. I must be thinking, Brooks Barnheiser. The two are very, very similar in my eyes. But yeah, those teams I have a tough time seeing make the NCAA tournament. But in terms of the amount of teams I think end up getting bids, I would probably go with 9 for the time being. I do think there's a world where there's 10. I do think there's a world where there's less than 9. But just in terms of how this conference stacks up, I think a lot of the teams in the first 3 tiers we have should have no problem making the NCAA tournament. And there's room for 1 or at most 2 teams on the bubble to be able to do it. But I think 9 would probably be a good number going into the year for the Big Ten.
Yeah, I have like 8, but I feel like 9 could also be a pushing it idea as well.
Yeah, 9 might be pushing it slightly, but I'm a big believer in what some of the teams on the bubble have to offer, even towards the lower parts of our third tier. I think those teams should play pretty well and gain enough quality wins to add to their resume to be able to make a good case for making the big dance. But let's get into our conference awards. Who we think is going to be taking some hardware home in the Big Ten at the conclusion of the regular season in Big Ten play? For my player of the year, I have Braden Smith. Definitely was having a tough time going between Yaxel and Braden. I think Yaxel could definitely compete to be a national player of the year. Same thing, of course, goes for Braden Smith. I think Braden Smith, having a first team All American, Bob Cousy Award winner, return to the sport. You already know what Braden Smith is. He's one of the best point guards we've really ever seen in the history of college basketball. I'm willing to go there with that. But yeah, he's my pick for player of the year.
Jax. I just think that while Braden Smith is likely the front runner favorite and probably winner of the National Player of the Year award, I think Yax will show up a lot more in conference play, and I think that's kind of going to be his big stick going into this year. And I like the fact that he is going to be that main player on the team. Smith has so much help behind TKR, Lawyer, Clough, you name it, really. And I'm not saying Michigan doesn't have that, but it's not the same level. I feel like he's going to be pushing his boundaries a lot more than he has in the past, and that will likely lead to him being player of the year. But wouldn't be surprised if Braden Smith wins everything.
Yeah, I don't hit the Yaxel take at all. I'm super, super high on Yaxel end of board. But in terms of my freshman of the year, I have Cam Ward. I've heard really good things coming out of the camps of people who follow Michigan State basketball. I honestly have to say this might be the weakest conference freshman talent-wise in the country, but I think Cam Ward's going to need to play an important role, whether it's off the bench to start the year and inserting into that starter lineup midway through the season. I think he's going to bring good athleticism, he's going to bring defense. I like what he can do off the dribble, but I would probably pick Cam Ward right now to win freshman of the year in the Big Ten.
I kind of like that I take as well. I feel like I'm kind of cheating by doing this. I'm putting Omer Meyer as my rookie freshman of the year. I don't really know if he counts as a true freshman coming in from Israel as an international prospect, but because of how low leveled the freshmen are in the Big Ten, Kanaye has mentioned, I just don't think it's an unfair assessment, and Meyer is likely a starter, barring like a coin flip with him and CJ Cox from day one. I don't think there's really much more to say on how he could be better, but I feel like this is going to be a close race depending on how Meyer is considered, if he's a freshman or not.
Yeah, no, I don't hate the Omer Meyer pick there. Of course, you don't really know with international guys, especially eligibility status, but I don't hate the Omer Meyer pick at all. I think he's going to be really, really good at Purdue. You saw what he did in the World Cup. But moving on to my newcomer, which is basically our Transfer of the Year award, I'm going with Yaxel for a lot of the reasons you talked about, for you making your pick as him for Player of the Year in the Big Ten. I think Yaxel's going to be great. I think he's more talented than Danny Wolf was coming over to Michigan. And I think a lot's going to be on his plate. I don't love the roster makeup around Yaxel, and I think he's going to have to do a lot. Defensively, of course, offensively, I think he can even play make a little bit really well. And I think he's in store for a really, really big year. Definitely going to be a National Player of the Year candidate in my eyes as well.
Chose Yax as well. I'm seeing him as newcomer and Player of the Year. He just, once again, fills that role as a really good transfer. He's a top 5 transfer coming in to, honestly, for all transfers, probably the best transfer that you could find in the Big Ten right now. And I'm very excited to see how he fits in at Michigan.
Yeah, and getting into my Coach of the Year pick, I'm going with Matt Painter. Of course, there's room for Dusty May to win it if he has another successful year out in Ann Arbor. Brad Underwood, if the international project works in his favor, he's definitely got a good case for it. Tom Izzo is always a threat. But I just have a tough time seeing anyone match the level of play that we think Purdue should bring to the table this year in the Big Ten and nationally. And I have a tough time seeing anyone else other than Matt Painter win this award.
Yeah, I think Painter's a slam dunk pick right now. I don't really know how he wouldn't win this award unless Purdue is just...
Yeah, and getting into my all Big Ten first team, I have Braden Smith, Bennett Sturts, Cohen Carr, who, like you mentioned, you're on the Cohen Carr hype train. I most certainly am as well. I definitely think there's a world where he can turn himself into a lottery pick in next year's NBA draft. And I think Michigan State needs Cohen Carr to be a guy for them this year. We're doing more than just being that lob darter, someone who can get up and down the court and rim run and just throw down athletic dunks. I think he's going to bring a new dimension to his game to the table this year for Michigan State. Following that, I have Yaxel Lendeborg and then Trey Kaufman-Renn rounding out my all Big Ten first team.
I slightly differ. I have Smith, then I have Donovan Dent, who I just feel like will be carrying UCLA a lot. He's going to deserve that place. And then Andrei Stojakovic, who will probably rise above the other Balkan players and probably be just that leading scorer on the team. I think Illinois deserves a first-team All-Big Ten guy for how good they're going to be. And then Yax and TKR to finish it off. I think this is I think regardless of how you shake it between me and Kanaye's options, it's a good first team. It's probably one of the best first teams of the decade.
Yeah, I definitely had a tough time leaving both Andrei Stojakovic and Donovan Dent off of my first team. Donovan Dent, definitely, I think I had a tougher time. It's just something that just kind of sticks with me was seeing how he played against Michigan State in the NCAA tournament. Wasn't great. Didn't shoot the ball all too well, and now he's going to be playing Big Ten competition full time once again to league play this year. I still think he's going to have a good solid year nonetheless. I don't know if we're going to see first team level play out of him this year, but no, I think he's still going to be really good. I do think there's a world where Tomislav Ivizic on Illinois makes the first team over perhaps Trey Kaufman-Renn, where Purdue's so loaded offensively. I think there's a chance that Kaufman-Renn's numbers might take a little bit of a hit just because of that. And maybe that opens up a world of possibility where Tomislav is able to make that first team. But overall, those are my picks for the first team. Let's get into who wins the conference. I think it's pretty safe to say we both have Purdue winning the Big Ten this year.
Yeah, I think I can further it up. I think Purdue is the solid choice to be a 1 seed. I think there's really only one team that could be a 1 seed in this tournament, and I think it just has to be Purdue. And to get slightly into seed lines for our bids, I think Michigan at most gets a 2 seed. Illinois and UCLA can get 3 seeds, but likely be 4 or 5. And then I can feel that Michigan State through Washington will fill in the rest. I think there could be a seed line per team at the rate we're going for the Big Ten. And there's just a diverse role play really here in the Big Ten of just how many different ranked tiers there are, and that will lead to different seed lines. But I wouldn't be surprised if a team like Purdue does lose to like an Iowa or an Ohio State, and that does boost their seed line pretty heavily going into the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, again, I just think it comes down to Purdue's roster makeup and the continuity they have, coaching that Matt Painter's, showcase in his time at Purdue outside of a few NCAA tournament blunders. It's just head over heels above the rest of the playing field in the Big Ten. There's a lot of questions with other programs. Michigan, there's really a lack of shooting on that roster. You don't know how Elliot Cadeau is going to be now at his new home in Ann Arbor as opposed to Chapel Hill. Illinois, again, you really don't know how this international project that Brad Underwood's kind of taking over Champaign with it. We don't know if it's going to work, and we got to see it play out. But yeah, I just think there's the least amount of questions out of any team in this conference with Purdue, and I think that they should be right back to competing for a Final Four 1 seed line once again.
I couldn't agree more.
So I think that's pretty much going to take care of everything we had on this episode today of our Big Ten conference overview going into the season. As always, it goes a long way if you engage with our content any way you can. And until next episode, we'll see you all next time.